Okay, now the main presentation. I hope the majority of you have kind of perhaps heard of SatView. We've been promoting it over the last couple of years. It's been available since sort of middle of last year, mid-July 2016. And next slide, please, Luke. For those who are not aware, it's really a powerful visualization tool. It enables then effectively to kind of complement P1X. It's not a replacement for P1X, but it brings in a lot more functionality and features, particularly for sort of visualization and desktop publishing. It has, I think, a very nifty tool to convert effectively what we call skeletal SATURN networks and actually use the embedded Bing APIs to actually then apply curvature to match the underlying road network. It has a number of easy to export routines to GIS applications, e.g. map info via tab files or ArcGIS with shape files. There's a whole lot more we've been working on, and I think what's going to happen, well, Luke will now sort of just run through a kind of presentation, probably last about 35 minutes or so, just talking through the key aspects of SatView in terms of differences, how to use it, accessing it, running it from SatWin, how to apply the bendy features. So I hope you found that presentation interesting. Next slide, Luke. If you're needing support, then please contact us via the SATURN support email. There are further details on the SatURN website. I think at the very end, I think Luke will come to the actual homepage on the SatURN software. We'll do that in a minute, Luke. And on there's actually a number of how-to videos, primarily on SatView, and that's fairly kind of bite-sized chunks, sort of 7 or 8, 9 minutes for each, which enables then just sort of stepping through, in essence, the kind of things which Luke's going to talk about now. So if you're not necessarily clear or you need to access it or want something a bit more digestible or take it away, then they are available on the SatURN website. As I say, there's I think 9 SatView presentations from sort of starting to GIS export to applying bendy links. And there's obviously then a number of other FAQs on the website. Now, I think we'll come to that at the end, but I think I should really not wait for Luke any longer. So Luke, if I can over to you, please, and to kind of then just take us through the SatView presentation. There's been a little email correspondence from David, the SatURN team. We will be using conversation to ask questions. So in the instant message panel, if I just put in here, if there's any questions which you have, please don't hold back, don't wait to the end. We'll be able to pick them up whilst Luke's presenting, or maybe come back to them at the end. So please, any queries, just pop them into the conversation area, and I say the SatURN team will be able to kind of sort of pick those up as we go along. So over to Luke.
Thank you, Ian. Just give me a second to switch to my screen. Okay, so my name is Luke Davis. I work with Atkins inevitably as a transport modeler. I'm not directly a part of the SatURN software team, but I've become the default person for these kind of presentations over the last 5 months, so have a fair bit of experience in doing this. So actually our journey with using SatView, I think, starts in SatWin. Now, to use SatView to its full potential, it's now best to use a UFE file format. Now, this is a standalone file which we use for SatView. You'll see I'm using a slightly newer version of SatWin that hopefully will be with you shortly. The main feature for our purpose is the fact that SatView is now on the home ribbon here, and you'll see next to it UFS to UFE. Now, if we click on this module, we can locate the UFS file. We find that in a file explorer, and when you hit run, you'll see that numerous temporary CSV files are created. These directly code all the data from our UFC file into the UFE. This means that SatView can run quicker because there's no need for it to reference the UFC, and also has the added benefit that it can work as a standalone file. You don't need all the supporting files to use it. So I've run that module. As I suggested to you, that now means that I have a UFE file. So in my folder, you can see that that's been created. So now we have that, we can go into SatView itself and open this. So when you initially open SatView, you're given 3 options. You can choose to start a new session, at which point you can choose the network files that you wish to use. We can open a session file from disk. We'll go into that a bit later in the use of session files, how they work, how you generate them. And then we also have resume last session. So if, say, 5 minutes ago, 5 hours ago, 5 days ago, you were using SatView and you wanted to recover what you'd done at that previous point, you can hit this button and it will reload everything that you've done, including if you've done any bendy links, any bands, etc. So it's a helpful little shortcut if you've ever closed the program by accident or just simply want to start where you left off the previous day. On this occasion, we're going to start a new session. So when I hit that, this box disappears. If I go to the File menu at the top left of the program, I can choose to open a network. Now I browse for my network file. Now I've generated 2 UFE files. I'm going to open my Do Something network first. When we hit open, you'll see that a loading box appears and it gives you a status bar to tell you what it's doing. In a large network, this may take, say, a minute to open, but once it is open, it tends to be fairly efficient, so I don't think that's a large price to pay. Once we've opened a primary network, we can also open a secondary network. So you can see that network is now opened. So to open my secondary network, I can go back to the File menu and I can choose Load Secondary Assignment. But before I click that, you can see that if you've had files open previously, you can use them in that Recent Networks panel. Now, Load Secondary Assignment, I do the same setup of browsing for my UFE file and opening it. By clicking on Load Secondary Assignment rather than just open network directly, it ensures that the program loads any geometry differences for us into the network and flags them, as you'll see separately. If you have forgot to do it this way, don't worry, it's not the end of the world. You can go to the Compare tab, as I'll show you in a second. In the Compare tab, you can load the secondary assignment there, load geometry differences, or clear them. Let's say by doing it in this way, we get this geometry differences appears in this window here. So you can now see that I've got 2 networks open. They're displayed on a Bing Maps background. By default, we have the Bing Maps road layer on, but we can toggle this between roads, aerial, and hybrids. And if you really wish, you can turn it off. And we've got the quick zoom feature on, which means, like you're used to in modern mapping software, you can simply drag around the software, you can zoom in and out, and the map will quickly reload for you. But the main functionalities within the software are available from this all these top ribbons here. So in the home ribbon, we can do various selections of parts of the network. We have a navigation section where we can zoom to, say, the simulation extent of the network. Again, we can select part of the networks. In terms of our links, we have options in that we can display data on them, and also the various functionalities around bendy links. With nodes, we can use SatView to move nodes, and if we want to see the detailed coding, we can of course hit this button to view in P1X. We have some exporting options that we'll come back to later, and in terms of the map window, we can turn elements on and off if we wish to, for example, toggling the overview map at the top right here on and off. As I say, this is a ribbon setup, so we can click on the Compare tab. That has what I was discussing earlier with loading geometry differences and clearing them. We also have network adjustments. We can adjust the coordinates, and again we can look at our bendy links. Now here we have some further exporting options as well with our 555 data and bendy links. So that's the ribbon section. You can see on the right hand side that by default the program loads us this summary window. Now this has some basic information on our network. It gives us the file location and lists the various parameters that we can go in and out of, just to give us some basic information on the network. Now this summary window updates with whatever you've got selected on the map. So if you clicked on a link, for example, you'll see that it displays some information on that link in both the directions. If we've chosen to load a data bundle, then you'll see that this area here updates. So if I choose load data bundle, display my actual flows and accept that. If I click back off and on again, now you can see that my actual flow for both directions is displayed. So that's just quite a nice, quick way of getting data about information even about your network. As I suggested, you can choose between nodes, links, and your assignment summary in this summary window. So it's quite flexible. Now on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that we have a structure window. This effectively lists all the various parts of our network. We can look at all the nodes, links, both in user and assignment forms. We can, as I'll show you in a minute, we can filter by this to show certain nodes, for example. And it also shows all our assignment routes, which we can quickly go to and zoom so that we can see our bus routes very quickly within the program. So as I say, we'll use that structure window in a second. Now, by default, the program has all the various possible layers loaded up. So you'll see that we've got our nodes, our links, our centroid connectors. We can choose to turn these various layers off to make it look perhaps a bit less cluttered. So you'll see that there's a layers tab here underlaid with the structure window. Now if we click on this, by default everything's on. I quite often choose to untick the majority of things, leaving myself with any network differences and just the links. And when I've done that, I can hit the apply button and we quickly see that, say, our node shapes and all have disappeared, just to make it a bit less cluttered. But obviously, you work with the software however you see best and however works well for you. So as I suggested, now I've shown you all the various basic windows of the software. I'm going to use the structure window to zoom to a certain node. So in this occasion, I want to go to node 50,015. I can type the number in there and hit filter. Now it looks like nothing's happened, but if you use any of the drop-down arrows here, you'll see that the various entries that return that number are now listed. So obviously in terms of nodes, there's only one listing. In our links section, we can see that all the simulation links that relate to that nodes are displayed. Now I can right click on that and center the map on the location. If I want to, I can obviously zoom in and center again if needed. So it's just a quick way of moving around the network. And as I said before, we can now look at the assignment routes that also pass through that point and display them quickly. So I've come to this location for a reason. That's because this is the part of our network where we have a difference between them. As you saw at the start, I loaded a do something and do minimum network. Now the difference between these is two variants for this road here, which is actually two variants of a river crossing. You can see that the green and the reds therefore represent links that are only in one of the networks, not both of those which are currently being displayed. If you go back to the structure window, these geometry differences are also listed here. So we can look at our added links. We can click on them, and again we can right click, zoom to location to quickly move to them. So SatView is quite a useful tool for understanding differences in our networks. At the moment, this is differences in structure rather than coding. I think it's fair to suggest that it could be quite cluttered if it showed all coding differences. So that's what it does as it stands. So that's the first use of SatView. So looking at network differences. Obviously, you could look at these coding differences in more detail by using the View and P1X. If you've got a node selected and then click on this button, you'll see that it's now gone from grayed out to being active. We can click on this button and view the coding in detail. But that's as far as we'll go on this occasion. Obviously, when we've got a difference like this, we might want to present some data in this area. But before doing that, we perhaps want to create bendy links. It's one of the main benefits of SatView in that, unlike P1X, it's on a Bing Maps background, so we can quickly load bendy links using the software. So if I wanted to produce bendy links for just the didcot area, which I'm currently showing, I can use polygon select in the home ribbon. Now if I click on that, I can begin to draw points on the map, and it begins to generate a polygon for me. Now I'm just going to draw a nice area around the central didcot area. Obviously this as you can see up here, I can also import this selection if I previously got a list of links that I wanted to import, and I can also export this selection of links. When you do exporting, it'll also export data relating to data bundles that you've loaded into the network. But in this occasion, I'm going to do my bendy links. So I've selected all my network. Now I can hit on trace bendy links here. Now this pops us up a dialog box. You'll see that we've got three options and that we can trace bendy links on the full network. Links which are currently shown in our mapping window. Or in this occasion, selected links, as that's what I've just done. If you've already got bendy links, so for example, if you were loading in a GIS file to the network, you could keep this box ticked and try and use SatView to match any remaining links in your network. So it's actually quite a useful tool in improving your GIS files as well as creating new ones. On this occasion, it obviously makes no difference to us. And you'll see there's various parameters by which the software will try and produce these bendy links. When you click on each of them, you'll see at the bottom it gives you a brief description of what they do. Default parameters that it gives you work fairly well and will, if your network's got a good set of node coordinates, will produce the majority of your bendy links, but feel free to play with these and tinker. So when we've altered with these, we then hit trace button, at which point we get a loading screen showing us the progress. Now SatView can process up to about 20 links a second. It effectively tries to match your node coordinates to the Bing Maps layer behind it. So if your node coordinates don't match with Bing Maps, then you need to move them slightly. So every time it can trace them, it will try to find the shortest path between those two node points on the Bing Maps layer and trace it accordingly. So we can see that I've picked around 300 links and they've quite quickly generated, despite the fact that I'm obviously presenting or recording. So it's a fairly quick process. And at the end, it does various tasks just to save all the data that you've done in the database, as well as record it in your session file, which you may choose to later generate. At the end, you can choose to load a tracing report. If you click yes, then you'll see the remaining window that I hadn't explained the tracing report generates. It separates out the links where bendy links have worked and those where it hasn't. So for those where it hasn't, you can look at the various options for tracing them. So if I click on a single link here, we can see that this hasn't traced correctly. We can look at the various options SatView's tried to use to trace it. Now, it's quite obvious to all of us modelers here that the issue is actually that node coordinate, which needs to be moved. So you wouldn't choose any of them. But if you wanted to choose any of these options, you can simply right-click and choose to apply to the link. So that's one of the ways of tidying up your bendy links options. Now, an alternative way, as I said, we can choose to move our nodes. So with that node we found there, I'm going to move it. I've simply used the Move Nodes option. I've clicked on the nodes where you don't need to be particularly precise. It works fairly well. So I've clicked it and dragged it to its new location. If I do the same with this node up here, now you have to give the software a couple of seconds on each occasion. Again, this is just so it can record what you've done in all its background databases. So now I've moved the nodes, I obviously don't want to go and completely regenerate the bendy links. As you saw before, you could choose to select a single links, trace bendy links, and just selected links. An alternative where it's just a single link is if you right click on it, we can choose trace bendy link and it will just do it for that single link. Now we can see this link is now nicely traced along the actual roads. The bendy links though operate on the assignment links rather than user links, so you need to do each side of the road separately. So the other option which I'll show you is if you trace bendy links manually. Now this is where tracing bendy links still doesn't work correctly. It generates you another Bing Maps layer showing you the start and end point of the nodes. You're effectively able to move the start and end points of your tracing. Where you get roundabouts, for example, you'll find that if it's an unexploded roundabout, your node is likely to be here, which effectively is not on the Bing Maps layer because it's inside the roundabout. Now therefore you can choose to drag the start point of where you want to generate the bendy link from to just outside the roundabout, and then if that works correctly, as will be displayed on the screen, you can then hit the apply button. So we can now see that we've traced both sides of the roads and we've got the bendy links there. So for our DIGCONT network, as you can see, the node coordinates are clearly quite good, and as a result it's traced really nicely and makes it a lot more presentable for creating outputs, and also just makes it a lot more simple to understand what's going on in the network that you're looking at, which I found particularly useful when presenting the networks and any outputs to the client. When you've done these bendy links and any amendments to it, if you go to the Network Adjustments tab, you can then export this data so it's available in the future. So as we saw, I've moved two nodes, so therefore I can click this button to export our 555 data. Now if I click that, within a couple seconds we see that our 555 data has been generated in several different formats. It generates a format that can be read straight into P1X to adjust our node locations, and to other formats that have use to us. We can also export the bendy links cards for 777 cards. Again, if we click on this, despite the volume of data to be extracted, it takes a mere seconds to load. And again, you'll see that we have our GIS file in two different formats, one of which is useful for loading directly back into P1X, and another format which is useful for loading into SatView for the second time. So that's our bendy links, which we've now created. So now we've got a bendy network, we might want to look at creating bands on those. So if I slightly move my window, so we increase the size of our mapping window and choose create bands. The software gives us the option to do bands in terms of a single attribute. So you could, for example, display flow on a single network, or something simple like bus flows or V over C, or whatever takes your fancy. Then we can also do a difference plot, as well as a stacked plot. So for example, where we could display our flow but separated by our user classes to give a bit more information. On this occasion, I'm going to do a difference plot. Now, as you saw previously, I'd loaded my data bundle before coming into the Create Bands window. We can also do it within here. You'll see that wherever this circle is displayed, that shows that the data is available in some loaded networks. It isn't some networks just because it won't always work. And then you'll get this red stop sign where you cannot display it. Now I've already loaded my actual flows. You could choose to send across your whole flow section if you wanted for this. So it's quite a useful box for choosing what is being displayed and what isn't. So now I've got my attributes over here. I can drag them across to where I want them to be. So we see that our difference plot is network 2 minus network 1. So if I drag my do minimum network to the attribute 1, drag my do something 2 network to attribute 2, we can also do this by double clicking. But this gives us some statistics showing us the maximum, the average value, and the minimum value found for these attributes. So we're saying that the highest flow found in our do minimum network is 5,265, for example. And it also generates us the difference values and what they're going to appear with our current settings. Now, like GIS software, we can play around with the scale of these bands. We can choose to target a width. So in this case, I'm going to choose a width of 30. We can see that our actual width is updated, so you can see that the maximum band size is going to be 1,000 meters, and the average will be 30. So say you can play around with this, you can toggle this option on and off, and create rounded options on the scale. We also have options such as minimum bandwidth. So for example, if you didn't want to see bands for any network differences below, say 10 PCU, where you're suggesting the difference is noise more than anything, you can choose this option. You can do the same with maximum bandwidth. So if you had a single link that was going to throw the scale of everything off, you could use that option. We can do fixed bands. I found this useful for the likes of V over C and bus flows. And of course an offset to move our links slightly away from, move our bands even slightly away from the links they're related to. But I can then go across all these options here to look at the various ways of changing our bands. Now in definition query, again, we can choose if there are any bands that we don't want to show, both in absolute and relative terms. Every time we've created a band, we find that a label is generated. By default, they're created to 6 or 7 decimal points, which for the likes of flow plots isn't entirely helpful. So I tend to tick the box to round to the nearest one. And again, you might not want to see the labels for all links. If there's a flow difference of say 1, it's probably not entirely useful to you, so you could put a minimum value of say 20, and obviously a highest value can be shown as well. Now we can choose the parts of the network within SatView that this is shown within. In this case, I'm just going to show the links in the visible area. This is partly just to save on processing time, despite the fact that it's not a particularly intensive process. And I also choose the link types where I want to show this or not. So I'm saying that only on simulation links do I want to display this data. Now finally we go across to the legend section. This is where, again, like GIS software, we can have a nice formatted legend to give us some information about what's being displayed. We can, in the increase and decrease boxes, write the value that we want to appear for the individual attributes. As I've done so, and then if you hit refresh legend, it automatically works out what you're trying to display and creates a legend for you. And it also gives you the scale that you've set up. If you wanted to show whipped legends, you can also hit this button here that will show that for you. By default, it shows you the 0 to 25%, 25 to 50%, etc. The scale of those sections. And in terms of your color scheme of your bands, we have all these various options here that have been chosen to be good in terms of colorblind people and just generally being contrasting colors. So I'd suggest using these. In this case, I'm going to choose a green and a bluey purple color. I want to reverse them as I want green to be in increase, and I can tinker around with the opacity of these bands that are created. If you wanted to create custom colors, you can choose the drop down button here and directly choose the color that you want, as well as choosing the standard option. So basically, there's just a great deal of customizability when you're generating bands. So now I've set everything up, I'm happy with what I've picked, and I can hit create bands. Now, as you can imagine, give it a few seconds again to generate, and now we can see that our bands have been created for us. I don't want to show links in just the primary and secondary network now, so I update my layers. And we can see that we've got quite a nice plot showing us some simple differences in the flow in our network. As I said before, by default, the labels are created for all links. If you wanted to hide these labels entirely, in the layers window, you'll see if you scroll across that we have the option to hide label, which I'm going to do for my bands. So I tick the box and I update. Again, you could even choose to hide the links on the basis that you've got the bendy links network, then it's perhaps not entirely necessary to be showing your links. So when you've tinkered around and you're happy with what you've done, of course you could go back into create bands and play around with anything that you've displayed. But when you've done this, you can also edit the disclaimer here. If you hit edit disclaimer, now you can make this to reflect your actual company rather than Atkins. This isn't a copyright to reflect the SATURN software, this is to reflect the fact that this is something produced by yourself, so feel free to change. So when you've created this window that you're happy with, we have the option to copy our map to a clipboard. So if we tap this and then we go to a basic piece of software like Paint, now we can paste in our map. And by default, SatView displays that in a nice format where it's imported for you all the various elements of the map, such as the north arrow, our mini map, our legends, and puts it in a nice format which you can then save. It's important to add at this point that these outputs can be used in published reports. The SATURN team, as part of your license agreement, effectively pays for the Bing Maps license, which accounts for the fact that you can do so. So it's a great tool for producing these kind of outputs. I personally think that this looks far better than any GIS-based output that I've produced previously, so I'd highly recommend using SatView for this. And to further on this, if I show you some examples of things I've produced, this is when I've been playing around with the SatView in recent times. So this is a display of bus lanes. I've simply put a minimum cap on values where I want bands to be displayed. So anything below 0.1, i.e. if there's not a bus lane, then it doesn't give me a band. If there is bus lanes, the value is 1. I put a fixed width of 30 meters again. So it's just a nice quick plot of where we've got bus lanes in the network. As you can see, we've got the north arrow, the copyright, our legends, and the mini-map. This is, as I showed before, a bus route, so we can very easily export what our bus route looks like and send this on. The flow difference, this is the polished version of what I showed you earlier basically. You can see compared to what we showed earlier, I've generated a few more of the bendy links. I've put an offset, I've put a minimum label cap, and just generally tidied it up a bit to look nice. But again, I think it's important to iterate that that took me about 5 minutes to produce. It's not a labour-intensive process like GIS software sometimes can be. We can simply export the network extent. So with this case, I've created bendy links on the entire network, just so we can quickly understand where we're covering, if there are any gaps in the network, and obviously include in our reports to show what we're displaying in our network. Now this is something a lot of people have asked for in SatView. This is a select link. As you can imagine, I've created the set link on this network here, on this link here. I've generated bendy links before doing so. I've got a legend and everything. At the moment, this has to be done by within P1X. If you overwrite one of the DA codes with some miscellaneous data, which is your already created select link data, and then load that data bundle within SatView. Obviously, you'd have to regenerate the UFE file with that created. As you can see, again, I think it's well worth the effort because this is quite a nice depiction of that select link. As I showed to you earlier, in the create bands, you can do a stacked plot. Now, this is an example of that where I've simply showed my actual flow but split by my 4 user classes. I find this quite helpful in understanding if certain links have a high proportion of HGVs, just to give a bit more extra information on the network. And finally, this is where I've tried to drill down into the detail of the network. This is a V over C plot where I've given a red, amber, green rating based on how good or bad the V over C is. So I've said that anything with a value of below 70, I want to display as green. And I've also put a minimum cap on the labels at 70 because, in all honesty, I'm not too bothered by the V over C. Then anything between 70 and 90 is displayed as amber to show that there's some kind of issue. And finally, anything above that shown as red. So it's just quite a nice simple plot to show V over C, and I think it's quite effective despite the fact that I haven't generated bendy links for most of these links. So that's some of the outputs that I've produced. Feel free to send in your own and show me what you can do. So when we've done all these kind of outputs, as I said before, we can save our progress within SatView using a session file, which is possible by this button up here. You're then able to save a .xml file, like the example here. So this lists everything that you've done in SatView to create that latest window. It's important to flag that at the moment it doesn't include everything. For example, if you've moved nodes, then that currently doesn't work, but will be working in a version to be released soon. But if I show you an example of this session file that I've created in our Oxford network, it's effectively possible to play around with this session file. Obviously, if you do so, it's at your own risk. If it goes wrong, don't go crying to the SATURN software email address. But if, for example, you'd created a plot like we've just done for the AM network, and you wanted to do the same for the PM without having to play around again with your zoom level, your bands, then you could simply come into this session file, replace AM for PM for your file path, for the alias, for the 1 or 2 networks that you have open, which you could then save and reopen that file, and everything you've done in the AM would then be available in the PM, which I just think's a really useful time-saving tip. And another use for this session file, I think, is again sending on files to clients. if they wanted to be able to interrogate any outputs that you've produced, such as, again, flow difference plots, then you could send this session file with it, and they could directly look at what you were looking at to try and get a better understanding of what's going on. So I think that's almost everything. I think it's worth adding while we're here that if you do have any issues with the software, please remember that at the top here we have the help file, as is common obviously with all SATURN software. So please do feel free to use this. It's quite an extensive help guide now. But obviously if that doesn't help you sufficiently, then remember we have the feedback option. And I ask that you please use this to report any problems, as well as just generally giving us feedback so that the software can be improved, because it's, I think we accept it's not the finished article and there's more to come from it. And as well, any questions about how you do things. So please feel free to submit them. And as Ian's alluded to at the start, on the SATURN software website, you can look at the how-to videos, which feature myself and Eric Nielsen. These are about 5 to 10 minute videos that just give you a help on individual topics. So introducing bands, for example. If you click this, you'll see that a YouTube video generates, which you can then go into looking at, and gives you a bit more extra guidance if you need it. Obviously, that's on top of the fact that this session has been recorded and is available for you at a later date. So I think that's it from me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Luke. I'll just perhaps pick up a few things as Luke's been talking. First off, the how-to videos on the website can be downloaded from the website, and obviously then accessed at your local hard drive if required, so you can kind of keep those for posterity. The second thing is, at the moment, the SatView, SatCoder are both provided on a subscription basis. We've just moved into the new financial year, 2017-2018. Mara and Gemma and the team have been going through and contacting the IT colleagues and for the renewals of the support agreements for this year. So there is then a new activation code and password to effectively enable SatView and SatCoder to work in this financial year. There's a small grace period, a very small grace period, rapidly running out for those who are effectively still on their 16-17. We have sent a fair number of codes out as part of this renewal process. So if your SatView SatCoder is no longer working, please contact your IT department first. They may well actually have the codes already. Or alternatively, we're in the process of just confirming the renewals for this financial year. But say any problems in terms of accessing, please contact your IT department in the first instance. And I say there should be some new codes available. I think that's probably all the main issues. I'll just pick up kind of comments in the conversation. I've been going through and replying as Luke's been talking. I think I've covered the majority of them. There's a clear question from Abu in terms of how many attributes it can plot at the same time. So it's effectively stacked bands. And I don't actually know the exact number. They can. Is it a question just adding further data fields?
I can't say I've ever tested.
Well, that's a very good question, I think. Right, we'll get back to that one actually. It's not something I can off the top of my head.
I'd suggest, given the size of the box, that it can carry at least 6. So, as I showed earlier with user part, with
David's choked in. David's choked in as an 8. Fantastic. Well done, David. Thank you. Right, just picking the things up. Martin. Yes, Martin. Regarding the SatURN Next TFL updates, that's a known issue. And I think, Sterren and kind of Mara are looking into that one. So I wouldn't be concerned by it, Martin, at the moment. We're not concerned by it, but there's a little issue there in terms of how it kind of what it displays. Right, just looking through, Gemma. Converting UFS to UFE takes a long time, sometimes longer than running SATURN. The actual UFS to UFE process itself isn't a kind of fairly complicated process. At the moment, it will actually then do the majority of the data field. So it will actually should take a few minutes. It won't, say if you've got a large model, take anything near as long as the actual main assignment. But at the moment, no. It's actually will do effectively a single pass through of all the things it requires.
And I think it's also worth adding at that point that you can run UFS to UFE as part of a batch file.
Correct,
So
yeah.
as part of your demand model run, you could tag on UFS to UFE to run at the end, much like you would with SatUFO.
Yeah. So if you're doing an overnight run for your assignment, you can then just run it as a post-process. So when you come in the morning, it's all there for you already. Okay, I've got a few more coming in. Right, Chris, decade-old problem. The coding distances entered manually, so distance and bendy link can be traced instead of entered manually. I hear your pain. It's something we're looking into. At the moment, it's not something which the existing software is able to undertake. We have been using, particularly for iris and RTMs, actually using a process called SATURN to SATURN, which actually generates the actual underlying network topology from the Ordnance Survey master map dataset, and actually then does effectively give you a structurally accurate network with the correct distances, including the curvature. So I've used that a number of times. It underpins all the RTMs. It's also been used more recently for some work in West London. So there are other tools available. So if you're interested in doing that as perhaps a network exercise, please get in touch. We've been running that for a number of consultants, both public and private, to kind of give them a good starting point for developing SAT networks. Are there any questions at the moment? I think I've picked up all the ones I've seen coming through on the conversation. Are there any others? Any kind of ones which are kind of tip of your tongue, tip of your fingers? I'll just give that a few minutes. Just to recap, then, we're going to effectively then publish these this particular session on the SATURN website. We will send through effectively a kind of announcement to everybody on the distribution list. So if you've received this kind of invite, then you're effectively on our list already. If you have joined separately or been forwarded by one of your colleagues, then please drop us a line to SATURN Software at atkinsglobal.com, and we can then add you to the distribution list. We've perhaps concluded our initial SatView webinars. We've done 2 in the last 2 weeks. They've been very well attended. It's been very encouraging in terms of number of people appearing. So thank you for making the time available. I think we probably need to do some more. I think we involve Luke as well. He gets very good at these. So I think we'll actually then perhaps have something later in the year, particularly when we run up to the user group meetings. But certainly we'll be, I think, providing some feedback and trying to work out perhaps what next. And so if you've got any suggestions of what might be worth covering, again, please drop us a line to SATURN Software, and we can actually then sort of see if we can perhaps do something. As I say, we're clearly keen that SatView and SatCoda are used more widely. They are certainly, I think, easy to pick up. That's what we've found in our training courses. If you've got suggestions in terms of wouldn't it be good, can it do X, Y, and Z, then please drop us a line. As I say, we're kind of looking for areas to where to go next. But other than that, I'd say we're just kind of a few minutes early. So unless there's anything else, I will just say thank you all for your time. Thank you to Luke.
Thank you.
Thank you to the SATURN team for all the work they've been putting over the last few weeks in getting these webinars up and running. and obviously in terms of the SatView SatCode development. And many thanks for your time. And take care and enjoy your lunch.